Hey guys, welcome back to the Total Potential Podcast. Cole and Jake here, and we are so excited to be joined today by our friend and new author, Ryan Sawyer. Today is his birthday and his launch day of his book, Choice Point. So we're so excited to have you here, Ryan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Um, so just to kind of start, it's so exciting to have this opportunity to speak, just knowing you before this, right? Kind of through this process. Ryan and I had the pleasure of spending, I was only there for one of the weeks, but a week of teacher training, yoga teacher training, which of course is a life-changing experience, and you go deep in those type of experiences. So we had a chance to really get to know each other there, and it's just exciting to see. That was just a year ago. Like, how much has happened for you in a year?
Yeah, so much. When you look back on it, that was a huge influence. Just being able to go and remove yourself from your environment and really do a deep dive into, just your own practice. And I think that's such an important piece of being able to not only remove yourself to kind of go deeper, but to develop the skills and the practice to go deeper for yourself when you go back home. Like, that's the whole point. It's like, I think a lot of times we go into an experience like that, and it's like, oh, it's about the experience, and it is, but it's also about what you take back with you to your family, right? And just how you're able to integrate that into your family as well. So
Yeah. Well, and something that's so powerful, and I can't wait to hear more about when we have a chance to get into the book a little bit, but those practices and how they've really influenced you and changed you, and really the actionable ways that you in your book give people really powerful tools to make change that lasts and matters, and they're action items, things you can actually do to make that happen. So I can't wait to have a chance to talk about that. But before we get too far into the book, give us a little bit of a background, what your experience was like growing up. I know you've spent a lot of time in the football world. Tell us a little bit about who Ryan was starting out.
well, ironically, I'm sitting here in my home that I grew up in right now. I'm actually at my parents' house recording this because I came over here for my birthday to see family, and it's been a long time with everything going on in the world. So we came over to kind of get out of our environment. So, we grew up here on this little 2.5-acre farm. I was the youngest of three boys, and very athletic driven family. And, we it was a wonderful upbringing in the sense, my parents were together, and everything seemed perfect on the outside looking in. I gravitated towards football and sports much more than academics, because I struggled a little bit with school early on. And so I gravitated towards football, where like the more aggressive the sport was kind of suited me the most. And so I ended up going to school at Central Washington University and in Ellensburg, Washington, and played college football there, and then went straight into a coaching career. And then early in my coaching career it was a bumpy road. Just wasn't a lot of opportunity, and had to kind of get my foot in the door. And so I was kind of in and out of it. Eventually landed my first full-time job in 2007, and coached for the next, I guess it was 9-10 years, something like that. And so, yeah, that profession, that job, that identity of being in football. I mean, my childhood room was plastered with motivational quotes, and just that idea of like just completely pushing myself in that realm was the only thing I ever knew and I ever wanted to do with my life. So when I found myself being a collegiate football coach at a Division I football program at Eastern Washington University, and winning a national championship in 2010, and then shortly after that marrying my wife Heidi, and up at Priest Lake, and all these things, like it was just it was kind of this like story, that was like, holy cow, like life is perfect from, again, from the outside looking in. So yeah, I never ever expected. And even in conversations with my wife, like going into this huge commitment of getting married, it was like, you do know you're marrying a college football coach. Like, do you know what that means, right? I mean, crazy hours. We're going to potentially move every couple of years, like not a lot of stability. And I embraced that. Like, I wanted that lifestyle, right? Until I had our firstborn. We had our firstborn child in 2012, Colton, and then 17 months later, Haley came along, Haley May, and instantly when Heidi was pregnant with Colton, I kind of paused in life, and it was like, looked in the mirror for a moment and said, okay, so what does this mean for me? You know, like, who am I being right now? And is this who I want to be being when he comes, when I have a child that I'm influenced in this world? So I started to look at a few things. I started to adjust some habits. And really I was about 80 pounds, 70, 80 pounds heavier than I am today then. And I was a drinker, and I liked to gamble, and I would chew a can of Copenhagen a day. And, you know, I mean, I was pretty much the exact opposite of the person you met at Kokoro Yoga. And so I started to kind of work on myself a little bit. And really what I started to do is remove distraction from my life. And it became very clear very quickly that once Colton was there, and that I no longer wanted to be a college football coach, that I still love the game. I still love the process. I still love being in the locker room with the guys and competing on Saturdays. All those pieces of the puzzle were still, the fire was all there. But I wanted to be home. I wanted to put my kids to bed. You know, I wanted to have dinner every night. I wanted there to be consistency within that. And so it brought what was always there that I was really good at suppressing, it brought it all to the surface. So I became a genius at hiding the fact that I had dealt with depression and anxiety my entire life. And I can think back to my teenage years of suicidal thoughts when I was 17, 18 years old. And then through my 20s was a train wreck of just not sleeping and really bad habits, and just a lot of guilt and kind of just beating myself up and not understanding it, and kind of reaching out for help, but really getting zero direction. And even the help I did get wasn't lasting. You know, it wasn't really any sort of practice or tool that led me to a different experience. It was just made me feel like there's something wrong with me, you know, from a principle standpoint, from a foundational standpoint. I felt like there was just like, you know, there was something wrong. And so when this started to bubble back up again right around 2012, I continued to coach for 3 more years. And that took me 3 years to finally get to a place where really what happened was, I mean, just diving into this, where Heidi found me curled up in a ball in the corner of the room, and she had no idea that I was dealing with anything. And she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, well, I can't really hide it from you now because you found me here in this place. I was hiding from the family. I didn't want them to see it. I was so terrified that what I was experiencing was something going to influence my family. It was going to impact them in a negative way. And so I was just completely sheltering myself. And everything that I was experiencing, everything I was feeling, everything I was thinking was just, I was trying to shove it into a box. And so when she found me there, that was kind of that pivotal moment where, okay, we recognize that we need to talk about this, something needed to change. And so what does this mean for us going forward? You know? Yeah,
go ahead, Jake. I can see a question bubbling up for you.
I sense the questions out of both these. That's why I paused. So.
Well, Ryan, obviously, thank you for sharing that. And I think what's super powerful, and one thing I wanted to ask you is like just having that athletic background, and kind of living that whole adolescence and through your high school years all the way into college, and having that kind of that, I guess if you want to call it the crutch of the sport. Mm-hmm. Very similar experience for me through my athletic career. And so I'm just curious to know or get your opinion on, you know, all the great things that sports have to offer with, you know, all the hard work and teamwork and all the stuff. Mm-hmm. What's your thought on that as far as the development side of it as a kid goes, though, when you are a good athlete and then you have some of these things that are maybe easier to suppress, or you got all these people telling you all the time, hey, you're so good at this thing, right? And you totally forget, or you totally lose concept of like who you are personally, you know?
I love that question, Jake. And I think it could be a conversation we could stick on for an hour or more, you know, because there's balance in everything. And I recognize at some point in my life, maybe in my early to mid 20s, that I couldn't remember a day where I didn't get some sort of compliment for the progression and the success and the accomplishment and the achievements that I was always seeking, and validation. And so when that was no longer there, it was like, wait, where's my identity in all of this, you know? Yeah. And no question that, what I was experiencing internally, that football provided an outlet that probably was healthy in some respects, and also was extremely, like you said, a crutch, right?
Yeah.
So it allowed for me to hide. And
Yeah.
even when I left coaching for a little bit and came back into it, it was like without it, I was lost. And then, okay, no, here I am. This is who I am. I'm a
Yeah.
ball coach. This makes me feel comfortable. Now I'm back in my known. Now I can hide again, right? And so it's interesting because I think it's a balance with everything. Like you said, there's a ton of value in youth sports and everything else, but I think it's a balance. I think at the end of the day, we have to try to really allow the space and the time for with my own children to be able to have that open, conversations, to let them experience what they're experiencing, and to create that. What I talk about is me personally as a man in the house. I feel like my role is to create an environment of growth. Like this is my role as a man, as a husband, as a father. And so where does that start? That starts within myself. Like I first have to create this environment internally of growth, right? And then that's going to spread to my marriage and then to my family and then outside of our four walls, right? And so if that means that I need to be empathetic and open and curious and compassionate, that starts with me first, right? And so if I'm creating that environment of growth, then we can explore different sports and hobbies and all kinds of things, but it all starts internally. Process of what are you feeling, what's going on, and and catching some of that stuff and just making it a conversation, like helping them understand that, like, this is the point of why we're here on this planet, is to grow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. As you said, like now you transition into being a dad, and it's such an interesting thing, right? Because as a kid, and maybe it was a similar experience for you, like always being good at a sport, right? Even sometimes parents can get caught up in that, and it's just like everything is about that one thing, and it's, you're all in on whatever that thing is. And it's like to hear you say that now as a dad, I mean, it's so cool to think about. If we can help our kids with that growth mindset and that internal, like, we need to work on ourselves every single day, that's only going to maximize if they're already good athlete or good at the guitar or whatever, right? But it's just going to make the experience so much more enjoyable, and they're going to be able to actually like flourish in it instead of just like, praying that it never comes to an end.
Well, and to your point, one of the things that, as I think back to my own journey, and I put a little bit of this in the book, but not much, is the guilt that I was experiencing was coming from all kinds of angles. Because guilt was my main vibration that I experienced for a lot of my life. Just guilt I just felt guilty all the time, no matter what was going on. And I didn't only feel guilty because the head coach was one of my very best friends, and I got these players who I recruited I felt this obligation to, and I wanted to be home with these kids, but also my extended family and friends that thought it was so cool that I was a college football coach, and it brought them together. And every season they would all come to 3 or 4 games, and we would socialize. And so it also was this feeling of like letting people down, because it's pretty cool when your son is a Division I collegiate football coach and has won a national championship. You like to tell your friends about it, right? Or whatever. So like I felt like I was also not only afraid of leaving and then saying, what if I don't find my own happiness and all these other things? Like, what if I can't find peace? I might as well just stay here and be miserable. But I was also potentially stripping other people away of something that they were enjoying and find joy in their life, and brought people together. So, there's definitely something there too of like recognizing how we identify with other people's image of who they think you are, or who they think you should be, or who you were really.
So Ryan, walk me through them, because so I'm imagining this scenario where your wife finds you, curled up, and all of a sudden this identity that has been Ryan for the last however long, suddenly is going to get peeled back in a really raw way. So kind of walk me through that initial, like, okay, I'm going to make not only a change, but like a massive change in my life.
Yeah. So out of the gate, again, it was more shame and guilt because I was like, hey, I'm not the man you married. You think you married. Like, I put on this mask, right? And the whole world would view me as this loud, confident, intense, right? I mean, and I was the loudest coach on the field, super intense, super passionate. Like, you would never think that this man struggled with his self-identity, right? You would just be like, no, he's confident, he's grounded, he knows where he's going in life. Like, let's get behind that guy, right? And so when I was telling her about this lifelong of this and kind of started to speak it a little bit, like, there was this little sense of relief because now I was hiding it just a little bit less. And so that whole process was, and it still is today. I mean, I find the layers of ego are getting added if we're not aware of it, right? So we're always peeling back that veil and kind of looking and say, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Right? So that process is a life practice, I believe. And in the beginning, it was for me to try to, find answers and solutions, not just for me, because I thought that this was my existence. Okay, I thought there was no fixing me when I first started. It was so I could provide some sense of tools and relief because I saw this similar vibration in my children. And that's what broke my heart the most. Is about when Colton was about 2 years old. I'm like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just my own little mirror of myself. But man, I felt like I was passing that on to him. And so it was like, I'm fixing this shit because I'm not passing it on, right? And if I do pass it on, I'm going to give him the tools. So when he's 12, 13, 16 years old, like, he's going to be able to process it. He's going to be able to understand it. He's not going to get attached to it like I am, right? And so, and then as it kind of started to progress and I had a little bit of relief and I started to share this, I started to detach myself from that story, from that narrative of being in depression. Because when you're in it, you can't see anything else, right? There's no way out, right? And there is no door, there's no windows. And so as I started to kind of let a little bit of light in, it became me this realization, like, wait a minute. When I started to connect some dots too, even I dove into like neuroscience and epigenetics and cell reproduction. I mean, I dove into the science. I needed to know what was going on, right? Yeah. And as I started to connect some dots, it made me realize, like, I made this mess. Like, I created this mess internally. Nobody else did this. Like, this is my own doing because I let these thought patterns run on a loop, right? I let this vibration of guilt, I let it run. I didn't shift it. I didn't let it go. I didn't replace it with anything different. So the more that I experienced it in this moment, the more I'm going to have to experience it in the next. So if I can start to experience something else, some sort of joy, I mean, it doesn't even have to be joy or peace or love. Like, it can just be a little less guilt would be better, right? Some sense of relief. And then it became like, okay, hey, listen, I want to just calm my mind down. I want to quiet my mind. I want to like just have moments of relief. And eventually there was this threshold, Nicole, where I went from running away from what I considered like this dark cloud, right, to chasing hope, to chasing light. That was actually one of the original titles of the book, was going to be Chasing the Light, because there was this threshold, and then it was like, oh, I'm experiencing more of this than that now. Right?
What was that kind of tipping point between more darkness and suddenly like the element of hope?
Letting go of my narrative, letting go of the story that I was telling myself. There was a lot of stories that are running in our subconscious mind. And if we don't spend the time in silence and in practice and just being curious about what's going on, why is my life showing up the way it is? If we don't get really, really curious about it, in all aspects, relationship, business, everything, then that narrative is going to play out. And my narrative running in my mind, there was multiple things. It was sooner or later, you're going to screw this up. You're not good enough. You're stupid, right? And there's different stories that behind each of these pieces of the puzzle. A fear of being wrong, like a fear of putting a piece of work out there. Even like this book right now, it's launched today. We're doing like the big push in 45 minutes right now. And there's still like, I pulled it up this morning and was scrolling through it on my Kindle, right? Because I'm like, hey, there it is. And I'm looking for mistakes. Like, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong, right? There's the narrative. And I caught it this morning even. At 5:30 this morning, I'm like, replace it, Ryan. If there's something wrong with it, like, it's not going to be perfect. You're doing your best, right? And so replacing that narrative with something a little bit gentler eventually, and then eventually you can replace it with something super powerful.
Yeah.
And I love even the story of right now, like in this present moment. 2 years ago, you told me I was going to write a book. I'd say that's a pipe dream. A year ago, I had the idea, the concept, and what I wanted to do. And I maybe even told you guys about it at Kokoro Yoga, that I was writing it. But I was probably speaking from my future self. I was probably saying I was writing it, but in all reality, I actually wasn't writing it yet. And then 6 months ago, it was like, I'm writing this thing. I hired a coach, and we figured out a process that works for me, and I wrote it, right? But this was a process of healing and convincing, and healing and convincing myself. And then eventually it was like, well, I did it. Like, here it is. It's out there.
Yeah.
Now, so then you have to, at some point, just like allow for that to show up fully. Allow for that version of you to show up. So it's letting go of that old narrative. But first, it starts with awareness, right? We have to become aware of something's going on underneath the surface, and then letting go of it and rewriting a different story.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that you just said that I would be like, okay, let's pick and talk.
Hold back. Let's go back. We might have to do another podcast. I was like,
so many good things.
I loved what you said. The one thing that was super powerful is just when you first had that kind of that silent time, right, of just having those small moments of relief.
Yeah.
Like how powerful that is, that you can just build upon, just like maybe it's even 10 seconds or something where you just don't feel that old way, right? And it's like, wow, holy crap, that's freaking awesome. How do I get more of that,
Yeah, exactly, Jake. And so if that's possible for 10 seconds, it's possible for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? That man, you just got me goosebumps, buddy. That is exactly what happened. And you actually just reminded me of these small moments where I was like, there it is. And then it was gone, right? And then rather than being like, oh no, it was like, hey, there it is. Okay, I created that now. So, okay, so how do I create more of that? And and we can go into all kinds of ways of how that's possible. I mean, everything from meditation to breath work to chanting to yoga to, I don't care, jumping around, dance parties. I mean, my family, we love dance, but I see the vibration down a little bit, even with like the whole Corona deal. I know, like, hey, we got to get our immune systems up. So like movement and our energy, our vibration. So like we do daily dance parties now, because I'm like, I know what that's doing to their bodies, to their immune system, to their energy, to their psyche, right? So we put on The Greatest Showman and we run through that. And I love that soundtrack. And I know the messaging that's getting in their little psyches. Like, I'm like, yeah, man, come alive again. Boom. The Greatest Showman, man, play it again from now on. You know what I mean? Wait until tomorrow starts tonight. Play it again, right? Because I'm just like, I know what we're affirming. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, from now on, it's running in my head. I'm like, hell yeah, let that run, baby. I'm all in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly.
And that's controllable too, right? I mean, like the COVID and the shutdowns and all that, like nothing we can do there, but you can control the environment you're building with your wife and your kids, and that's what's so cool about it.
Everything's an impression on our mind.
Yeah.
Everything is an impression. Everything we read, everything we listen to, everything we watch, our circle of influence, everything we think about ourselves, everything we feel, it all makes that impression. And sooner or later, that impression projects back out.
Yeah. Just see it out in the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So Ryan, I love this thought around, I would say any person in their household has this power, but I really think it's a very powerful message for husbands and fathers to see the role of the man a little bit differently within the family. So your words around creating that environment of growth, I think, are really powerful. Could you walk us a little bit through, in the book that you talk about, your principles of transformation? And there's a few that I think in family life are especially important to consider, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about them.
Yeah. So, the first, we already kind of touched on awareness a little bit, but the second one is focus on you first, right? And when I first started to really work on myself, and because Heidi and I got to a place where we recognized how we were trying to change things about our life wasn't working, right? And so we were sabotaging our marriage and everything else, and we were just at this breaking point. And that was when really we got this massive download. Like, we're standing in the kitchen, and this is after a ways, and this was like 8 months after I left coaching, And, and I went down the wrong path of how I was trying to reinvent myself. And her and I were at a breaking point. We were basically discussing me moving out, and I got this just download. I mean, it was, I don't know how else to tell it, but like a message from God, the universe, however it resonates with you. It was like, you need to do the work. And so I told her, I was like, we need to do the work. She's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I'm not exactly sure. But this is the message I'm getting. And so we need to go internal. We need to give each other space to grow, right, at our own pace. And we need to try to work to become the best versions of ourselves, right? And so that led us to the different tools and practices and shadow work and all kinds of pieces of the puzzle. And I was already, it had a deep meditative path that I was on and all kinds of things. But what I recognize is like there has to be an element of selfishness before we're able to be selfless, right? Mm-hmm. We have to start with ourselves. Like if we aren't aware of and in control of our own inner domain, then everything is going to bounce back to us in the way that we're showing up. And everything is a mirror. Everything is a projection onto our own need for healing. Right? So if there's something that irritates me about my kids or my wife or my parents, it's this constant checking with yourself saying, what is it about that person or this circumstance that's hitting something within you that makes you feel not good enough or not safe? What need is not being met that you can meet internally for yourself, right? That's basically what we're talking about here is self-parenting. You're parenting yourself. You're giving yourself, you're meeting your own needs, you're loving yourself first, you're making yourself feel safe, you're finding all those pieces of the puzzle that you'd want to provide for your children, right? You're doing that first for yourself. And the more you do that for yourself, the more it naturally just shows up for your kids and for your wife, for everybody else. So focusing on you first, I think is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, that's been, I think, something both Jake and I won't speak for Jake, but something both of us have experienced. And I think culturally, like on many levels, I think there's a pull as parents to be very selfless and give, like, even beyond your means in every direction to your children. And I have found that the more I take care of myself with love and respect and patience, my kids are actually getting a hell of a lot more than they were when I wasn't creating that environment. So I think that's a really powerful and important message. You got to take care of home base before you can go out in any direction. And, sometimes you think about that in the bigger picture, right? Like going out and serving somewhere in the world or an organization or whatever it might be. But if you can't serve here first, and then in that little space second, it's like, who really cares about what's out there,
Well, obviously I know that you resonate with this because of our yogic background, but there's a balance in everything, right? There's a middle road for everything. And I think one of the things I actually just recently wrote about, because Heidi and I are working on our next book together, and so we're doing some just journaling with different principles in mind. One of them is the difference between guidance and servants. Like this idea that I am here to guide my children, I am not here to serve them.
That's
right?
powerful. Yeah.
And so where does that line get crossed to where I am giving them everything they need to show up for themselves, to venture into the unknown, to be curious, to be open? And where am I taking that to? Now I'm just serving them hand over foot. Like I'm just, all the way down to, they're 6 and 7 years old, but I'm not going to get them a glass of water. Go get your own glass of water. You're thirsty? I don't care. Go get it. Like, I'm not here to serve you. Right? And so at the dinner table, we all make up our own dishes. Go get your glass of water, sit down, like, those types of things. Like, all your needs are met. I'm making sure that emotionally and physically and mentally, all your needs are met, spiritually, everything, but I'm here to guide you from that point, not to wait on you, And so, just to take a look at that and be curious about how it is that maybe by just giving them a little bit more space, you're actually serving them better.
Yeah.
To find themselves, so.
Yeah. I also really appreciate, Ryan, just because I also know your wife, Heidi, that you guys have taken on this journey together, but it doesn't mean you're doing all of the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have each found a path that is working uniquely for you. And there are some common elements, of course, but I just think the space to allow another person to have their own journey and do it side by side is a really powerful and meaningful message to convey to other people who want to walk the path, you know?
That's how we have found alignment. And alignment is like balance. It's a moving target, constantly moving, right? And one of the conversations I recently had with somebody was basically giving them the imagery of we're going down the same river, right? There's, if you take this path, you have a little bit different obstacle with the water in the sense of how rough it is or smooth or whatever, right? But we are going down the same river, but we each have our own individual kayaks. We each have our own individual paddles. We're navigating our own boats, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes to the calm place, like we're going to be able to paddle right side by side. So we're going through the rapids. Like you take your path, I'm taking my path. I'm going to paddle like hell, you paddle like hell. And then we're going to get to the spot where the river calms down and we can come back together, right? But we each are in control of that. And as long as we're both doing the work, to grow, she doesn't have a real robust morning routine and meditative practice. And like, you're not going to ever catch me anywhere but on the meditation bench my first 30 minutes of the day. Like, it's just, there's no other way I want to start the day personally. So, things like that where I'm like, when are you going to start meditating? But it's just a playful thing. And she does a little bit of box breathing. She does some breath work. She does a little bit of this and that. And she has she loves to go for her nature walks. And I'd rather be in my basement, doing my yoga, right, on the mat. So, I mean, it's just, it doesn't have to look the same or feel the same, but it is going down this same path in the sense of just growing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah.
Curious on that too. Just I remember, like, when I kind of started this whole thing, this whole path of growth for myself, I can't remember vividly that came home the one day and it's just like so overbearing, like to my wife, right? Like, like either you're in or you're out, right? Like, you have an experience like that when you first kind of started down that path, or do you have any advice maybe on, again, it's really hard, right? When you're on fire about something, you just want to share it.
Right.
But it doesn't mean people want to hear it all the time too,
Yeah, 100%. So we definitely experienced that same thing. I was, completely, in this vision of like, okay, where am I going with my life and who am I becoming, and answer all these powerful questions, asking all these powerful questions. And it took her a little bit longer to kind of get into that rhythm of doing those types of things. And then once she did, the most interesting thing happened. And this is really where the message that we want to share going forward is like, she'd be in alignment. She would be growing and she'd be shining. She'd be taking on something new. She has a big speaking engagement or land a couple of clients. And then I would feel shadowed and I'd go the dumps. This went on for years. And then I'd bust out and I'd be doing something and be super disciplined with this, that, and the other, and be like just vibrating at a high frequency, and she'd shut down. And we was like, why can't we both be on at the same time? And finally, I remember the very first time it was like, hey, we're both in this really high vibration. It's like, I feel like it's maybe the law of polarity. Like, it's hard for both of us to be at the same frequency, right? But eventually we kind of found this ability to be, like I said, in our own boats, right? And so it's a dangerous world when one person is growing and the other person is not. That is a dangerous place to be. But it's also just as damaging if I'm growing and I'm projecting my judgment about you not growing on you, right? Because there is, again, if you're judging your partner, then you're judging yourself. Like, there's something there inside of you that you are judging the past version of yourself that wasn't growing. Right? And so let's forgive that person. Let's create that space and find that empathy for your previous self that didn't know what he didn't know. And when you fully open yourself up to that present moment of who you are showing up as right now, and you let go of any old story completely, then all of a sudden that space is created and that environment is created for them to walk into their own power.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Love that.
Ryan, there's something really powerful you talk about in your book that I'd love to hear more about, which is sort of the cycle of transformation. So we've talked a lot about this, the choice point, right? This initial like, holy shit, we got like something's got to change. And I think there's a lot of different ways that people experience that. But I'd love to hear more about kind of how you see that cycle continuing on, because I think a lot of people have that initial like, oh man, I'm on fire. I need to make a change. I'm ready to go. And then boom, like almost immediate, like maybe take one step forward, but then that's kind of the end of the journey. So I'd love to hear more about this cycle that you see.
Okay, so I'm going to geek out. I'm just going to prep you for that. Okay, because this is something that when it came to me that this is what I was experiencing, I mean, it was so exciting to me. And I created this model, and I'm able to kind of just keep track of this could be within a day or a week or months or a season of life, right? So the choice point, like you said, this is recognizing we want something to be different, right? So you watch a motivational movie and you're like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up, I'm doing it, baby, right? That's the choice point, that you're making some decision about your future. And then with the next phase is what we call the void. So if I'm going to change something about my life, I need to declutter or simplify something. I need to remove, where that's, again, the narrative in my life. Or for us, a great example in the book is canceling cable. Right? So we needed to do more in our lives. We needed more time back. And so me watching 15, 20 or X more amount of hours of football every week was not serving me any longer or my family. So it's like, if we cut out cable, there's all this space. What am I going to do with this space? Now I'm all of a sudden out of the known environment of having football to watch every Thursday, every Saturday, all day Sunday, right? I now have this unknown that I have to address, and I can replace it with whatever I want. So it's even all the way down to, we love to declutter our space. Like we walk in our home, there's zero clutter, right? And because that's a thing that's stealing our energy. So the void is something we need to create to actually do the work. And then we go into the climb. The climb is where we are learning a new perspective. We're learning a new mindset. We're creating a new practice or tool. We're reaching up to mentorship, right? We're finding somebody who's walked the path before us that can illuminate that path for us. You know, that's picking up a book, it's listening to a podcast, and then it's like, okay, now we need to actually do the work, which is practice, right? We need to practice being this future version of ourselves. We need to create that imagery. We need to write a vision. We need to be clear about what it is, where we're going. So the void is cleaning our windshield, basically, right? And decluttering and figuring out what we don't want, and then replacing it with the climb. And then here's the interesting piece, is that we always get to some place where we think, hey man, I'm doing it, right? Like I'm eating healthier. Let's focus around our physical transformation. I'm exercising. I lost 10 pounds. Who got, right? I get to this plateau thinking I've made it, right? Well, if we sit at a plateau for too long, and it's good to recognize your wins, but if we sit there for too long, what we don't recognize is that our mind is always going to allow us to slip backwards. We're never on firm ground, right? This is why we're always either getting better or we're getting worse. There's no staying the same. So this idea that things are always changing in our world, in our environment. We're not the same person we were 5 minutes ago. So no question, we get to a plateau, but we have to recognize very quickly that it's a false summit. We have to ask ourselves, what's next? Right? And when we do, we're able to step into fully the next version of ourselves. Then the next piece of the cycle of transformation is called integration, right? Where we find ourselves just showing up and doing things and habits that we were working on creating during the climb. And then it's like, hey, I just woke up. I mean, a great example is when I realized, okay, for me to get certain things done in my life, I need to start waking up earlier. So it was like, all right, I'm setting my clock for 6 a.m. And it was like, whew, that is early, right? And then it was 5:50, and then it was 5:45. And then now, Heidi was laughing at me that day. I was so excited because I slept in. Even today, it's my birthday. I slept in to 5, right? Like, I was like, I can't believe it. I slept till 5, right? Because I would legitimately wake up between 3:30 and 4 o'clock every single morning now without an alarm. And I just wake up because I'm ready for the day. And my mind starts to go towards what I want to create. Let's go do it. Let's go tackle. But this has been years worth of habitual training to get to that point, and if you, so anyway, that integration is where you find yourself just being and showing up as that future version that you've been creating in your mind, whether it be being present or being patient or being empathetic or being, focused and attention control, whatever that may be. You're just like, oh, wow, look at what I just accomplished. So from that place, then you recognize, well, if this is possible, what else is possible? What else? And then you're back to a choice point, right? You're back to recognizing, I want to experience more of, or I want to serve more because, or I want to have deeper relationships, or whatever that may be. And then, okay, well, if that's what you want, then you got to remove something.
Yeah.
Always, and that void is really simple for people to understand it. If I put it this way, I think if the price of the new life is the old one, right? So I have to let go of something if I want to welcome something else in, right? All the way down to like where we're going with our coaching business. I have also a residential painting company, and I love it. Always loved the work. I love the labor. I love being around the guys. I love just being on a job site. So I'm creating something else because I want this more than that. So there's parts of me running that company that I have to let go of. I have to delegate. Right? I'm really just now an owner of that company. I really don't do much other than a little bit of sales. But I miss parts of it. And you're gonna miss. I miss parts of coaching. I miss parts of running my painting company. I miss parts of old relationships that no longer serve the next version that I'm becoming and where I'm going in life.
Yeah.
So you have to let go of that old to create the new.
Let go of the old and be okay that it's not necessary. I heard years ago, and this was before I ever had kids. I mean, unfortunately, it was like a celebrity who's not really even married anymore, but the person was saying about like the way their relationship transitioned after they had kids, and that how important it was to really kind of grieve the old relationship. Because now that there's a new relationship that exists as a husband and wife who have a family. And it's not that new relationship is better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
So all those times where there are those transitions, it's okay that something back there felt really great, but something over here is really powerful and possible too.
Yeah. It's the idea of embracing change, right? Again, one of the principles where if I am thinking back going, oh, I coulda, or I woulda, or I shoulda, or I missed this or that. If we're at all reflecting backwards, like I tell people, like honestly, I try to only go back in life for two different reasons: to learn and to heal. Right? Because if I'm going back for any other reason than that, then I am avoiding and I am resisting what's next for me, the next evolution of who I'm trying to become, to be able to serve, to be able to show up more authentically. And even I think about being a parent. Like my 7-year-old boy is changing like by the day.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of it, you find ourselves like, oh, I want him to stay a baby. I want him to stay this way. Right? I'm not embracing the fact that he's legitimately like a different person today than he was yesterday. And so therefore, if I'm not embracing that change within him, then I'm not seeing him fully in this moment. Right? I think it was Catherine talking about how like there's this beautiful practice, and I try to practice it still. It really resonated with me of like, can I see you, even though I know you, right? I don't know this version of you. Like, can I look in your eyes and see this version of you for the first time? See you for the first time each day.
Yeah.
Like, what a beautiful practice with your loved ones and even with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a practice I work really, really hard on with the kids and with my husband.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit easier, I think, with the kids just because they really are changing so rapidly that like, wow, what's going on with you guys?
Right.
But it's a more intentional practice with my husband because, as adults, the change is a little slower. It's a little, I don't want to only see the old him. So I can really appreciate, what you're saying with that practice. And I want him to see me fresh too.
That's a gift. Yeah, that's a gift. Yeah. One thing that's helped me is to just say it out loud. Like to just embrace the kid or the child, the partner, and say, I see you.
Yeah.
Right. To actually just say it out loud. I think it's the spoken word. We know the power of the spoken word, but the spoken word is insanely powerful.
Absolutely.
It's crazy too, as a parent, along those same lines too. Like if you do something wrong, to tell your kids you're sorry. Like how hard hard that can be, but like just how powerful it is for them and their growth and everything, right? Of like, hey, I'm human. I'm doing the best I can to be the best parent I can be. But dude, I screwed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not perfect. Yeah.
Super hard to make sure it doesn't happen or whatever. But it's that like intentionality, and like just trying to be as in the moment as possible with not thinking about the past or the 50 things you got to do the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a choice to be present. It's a choice to be present. Yeah.
Ryan, I love in your book, one of my favorite parts about it is really how actionable it is. You offer a lot of suggestions around different tools and practices that really are so powerful, and they're very doable if you decide you're going to do them. So we can start in a lot of different places, but some of the tools that have really been really super powerful for you, could you share a little bit more about?
Yeah, so I obviously, we've already kind of discussed, obviously breath work and yoga, meditation, all those pieces. I mean, if you haven't dove into, for me, the science is always the big part for me. Like if I can connect the dots of what's happening, like I don't know if you were there, it was probably in the first week where Drew was talking about basically the science behind yoga. And I was like, oh, yoga is transformation in the moment. Because even when I went to Kokoro yoga, it was more to be like on the mat with Mark than it was to learn yoga, right? And then I fell in love with yoga while I was there, right? And so anyway, so one of the practices that I created, and I'm sure other people do this, but I didn't see it anywhere else before I started doing it. I was reading two different books at the same time. I was reading Think and Grow Rich, and I was reading The Feeling is the Secret at the same time. And there was this part of Think and Grow Rich that it was like, you talk about auto-suggestion, talking about basically suggestion to yourself, what it is, who you want to become, and how you want to show up for the world, basically, right? And at the same time, in The Feeling of the Secret, it was talking about this process of, it's a very short book, but it talks about the process of your conscious mind detaching as you fall asleep and your subconscious mind being more open like you are when you're in your early developmental years. And the secret to being able to program or to get to your subconscious mind to influence it is through feeling, right? Basically, the subconscious mind only projects or plays out what it feels to be true, right? No matter how we think about something, until we can get that thought into basically get out of our head and into our heart, like that's the ticket to transformation, right? And so it was like a bomb went off in my brain, and I'm like, I got it. And so it was what I called auto-suggestion or scripting. I began this process, and it's evolved a lot. And I tried to explain it in the book simply, but it continues to grow. And I'm really excited about sharing it with people further. It's another book that I'm working on. But is this idea basically of being very, very clear about what I want to create in my life, who I want to become, how I want to show up for the world, and scripting it out to such a level of like, how am I showing up as a father? How am I showing up as a neighbor? How am I showing up as a husband? How am I showing up as a brother or a son? Like, how am I showing up in relationship to myself? Like, what are my daily practices and habits? Breath work and yoga, whatever it is, right? And like, even all the way down to like, how is it that my business is operating? Like, what kind of opportunities are showing up? I mean, you can script it however works best for you and start super simple, but I would go to such an extent to where I would write it out, and then I'd record it with my own voice, because like, what voice does the subconscious mind trust more than any other voice than your own? Right? Your own, which is super weird and really hard for people at first to listen to their own voice. But once you let it in, you start trusting your own voice, like you build this internal trust that you never had before with yourself. And you get comfortable hearing your own voice. A lot of people aren't comfortable hearing their own voice. And so I would listen to these scripts as I was falling asleep, and it would put me to sleep. And 90% of the time, I wouldn't even hear the end of it. Because I'd be already asleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. And so I started with headphones. Eventually, I actually created my own little headband with an MP3 player that I sleep with. Like, I'm crazy, right? You take that and you layer on top of the fact that I use an air strip on my nose for my breathing, and I tape my mouth closed. I look like an absolute nut job, right? I look like an absolute, my wife's like, that is not attractive at all. Honestly, I know. But our moment by moment experience of life is shifting completely every single day. And like, all this new opportunities are showing up. Like, you got to at least like recognize. So a couple nights a week, I don't put it on so we can connect, right? But there's a lot other days like she's like, oh, you're doing that. I'm like, yeah, I'm in my workshop, baby. Like, you stay on that side of the bed, I'm on this side of the bed because I'm working here, right? And so I don't do this all the time, but I do it in seasons. Like I do it for 8 or 10 days or 20 days, or I do it for a month or two, and then I lay off and see what shows up. I surrender. I let go, right? And so I have other processes like that with the 3x5 note cards and different things. But with this one, it was instantly I noticed things showing up. Instantly, I noticed thought patterns showing up in my mind. I noticed about what I scripted, like saying I'm a grounded, patient, spiritual man that always creates space for his wife and children to grow. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I say that with some meditative music playing in the background, and I get myself. I go through a sense of an induction. Obviously get myself into a meditative state, and then this is what runs for an 8 or 10 minute little reel. Statements like that, and as I can hear it saying, I just get behind the feeling of it. Like I just create the imagery of that person. What do I look like if I'm grounded and I'm patient and I'm spiritual? Who is that person, right? Sometimes he has long hair, sometimes he has whatever, but he's in good shape. He's lean. He's disciplined, and he's confident. Whatever it is that you're creating, and so I started to see these things showing up. All the way down to, and this might resonate with some people, like as a contractor, there's a narrative. It's hard to find good employees, right? Okay, so I affirm that. My buddy and I, who are both I just can't. And then this guy fired that guy. And I realized that's a narrative. Is that true for everybody? Like, you have good employees. How'd you do it, right? Mm. And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, so I started suggesting to myself, I always find the right guys and the perfect fit for my company. All the right jobs come to me. So this is now the vibration that I'm carrying. And this is now what I'm suggesting. And then I hear it running. I hear it running in my head. Like, I'm like, it's all the right jobs coming to me, right? Or whatever it is. And in a very short period of time, my company goes from a Ferris wheel of employees to now 4 guys that have been with me for 2 years.
Wow.
And a completely different experience to be able to build it to get to where we are today, right? Of this foundation of guys who take care of business. I don't even have to worry about it. I don't even have to call them to see them. I don't even know if they're at work right now. I think they are. I'm sure they are. I get complete trust. Like, that's a complete different experience. And so this piece I'm super passionate about because it creates these loops that are running, and then all of a sudden you start to affirm it. It starts to show up in your life, from any aspect, again, relationship, business, how you treat yourself, all those things. So that's the one that makes me sound a little crazy. But when you want change, when you want change in your life and you're willing to do whatever it takes, like the shame, like no shame, man, I have no shame, Yeah. So.
Well, there's just something so powerful about that aspect of the quality of thought. I've said a lot of times, but we have like 60,000 thoughts a day, and they're the same thought, and most of them aren't true. They're just patterned. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to think untrue thoughts anyway, why not pick some like really powerful ones that move the needle in a different direction instead of something that just is an anchor to something not good or something that holds us back? It's all the power of those loops cannot be underestimated.
Yeah. 80% of the same thoughts as yesterday, right? And so it's like, why not
most
create
of those are just conditioned in us, right? They aren't even thoughts we ever chose. So choosing new thoughts. And I love the way you're using that as the mind quiets and falls asleep, right? And taps into that subconscious space that's just available. Like, why not take advantage of it? It's just sitting there anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
How about for your kids on that? Is that something that you guys focus on, of trying to put like those affirming thoughts, like the way you talk to them, or maybe some just subtle comments that you make to them just to try to create the narrative in their brain? Do you ever think about that, or what's your thought?
Yeah. So the word choice in my house is a word that we talk about all the time. Choice point is not just like something that we just grabbed out of the air for the name of the book. My 6-year-old daughter tends to kind of make fun of herself naturally. the other day, this is 2 days ago, she's on the couch and she goes, I have fat legs. I'm like, I said, do you want to have fat legs? And she goes, no. I said, well, then don't say it. What can you say instead? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, how about you try, I have strong athletic legs, and she's like, oh, okay. I have strong athletic legs. And so this is now, if I let that run, and she says that 8 or 10 times to herself when she's 5 and 6 years old, that it's going to be conditioned in, it's going to be programmed in, and she's going to grow up with an issue about her legs, whether they are beautiful from a societal viewpoint or not, right? And so, we are constantly checking the verbiage of our children, and not in a controlling way, but more of just like an open, curious way, like, hey, how else could we say that? I'm always huge on, as a coach or a parent, like, you are the expert unto your own life, right? And so it's all it is for us to be redirected is we're one powerful question away. That's it.
Yeah.
We're always just one powerful question away to redirecting ourselves in a different direction, or answering things in a different way, or finding the good in something. Like, Corona hit and instantly, Heidi lost her job and my company gets parked because we're not essential. And there was about a 5 or 10 minute window where I was like, oh man, right? And the what's going to happen? Am I going to have employees after this? Fear, right? And it was like instantly, no, I'm going to make it a loop run right now. So I programmed it in, and I said, there's opportunity in everything. There's opportunity in everything. And I would say it to myself. I would listen to it in a script until there's opportunity in everything. And I just said it over and over every time I caught any other thought. And I like to keep things sometimes broad, and then let the divine show up however it decides, right? To not get too specific with what we're suggesting to ourselves, because chances are if we get too specific, we're going to limit ourselves. To just say, hey, opportunity shows up in times like this. Opportunity shows up in times like this. Where's that opportunity for you? Just kept on reaffirming it in different ways. And so that's the loop that runs. Now I hear it. And then the next thing that happens, I'm like, well, there's going to be opportunity in this too. Let's go,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so fun to be able to reconnect, and I'm really, like, as a friend, so happy and proud of you for this work and how it really, I think, has the ability to impact so many people who, I think, especially, so many men, and I don't mean to project, I'm not a man, I can't speak to the man experience, but to just viewing what it means to be like a strong, powerful man today in a whole new light, with all these practices that allow you to create the future that you actually want to see, instead of just living out a script that's written for you. I just think is congratulations to you on, putting that in the world and offering a new path to people. I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, and it's just everybody. One of the reasons why I didn't get too detailed in any one specific tool or path, because I really want people to find their own journey, right? I'm gonna just shine a spotlight in a direction, and then you gotta navigate it for yourself. And just this idea, like, if without intention, our life is gonna be left to chance. It's gonna be left to conditioning.
Yeah.
It's gonna be left to our biases, right? So let's set an intention for who we want to be and who we want to become and where we're going. Then we have a path to walk,
Yeah, I just heard a Chinese proverb yesterday that's totally what you just said. And it says, the best teachers are the ones that tell you where to look, not what to see.
Love that.
Yeah.
Send that to me, would you?
I will. I'll send it to you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations. We wish you the very, very best. And it sounds like you have more works coming. So we'll keep our eyes out for what's down the pike for you and Heidi.
Yeah, there's always going to be something brewing. We can promise you that. But yeah. We're excited for this moment and the next. So thank you guys so much for having me on. Appreciate it. This is a great conversation. We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
And where can people find your book? Where can they go?
So Amazon is on for sale. They're on Kindle and paperback there. And eventually we'll be coming out with an Audible as well version of it. But IHP Coaching is our website as well. So you can check out what we have going on there too.
Sweet. And I didn't get a chance to say happy birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. Bye.